In today's show, I'm going to take a look at some different aspects of Hadaka Jime, the naked strangle. So if you want to know more about the naked strangle, keep watching. Hi everybody, I'm Steve Scott and welcome to another episode of Freestyle Judo. Well, today we're going to look at one of my favorite techniques, Hadaka Jime. Hadaka means without clothing, all right? And it means, what it implies is you don't need to use the lapel or jacket or anything else to strangle your opponent with. You can just use it barehanded. And Jime means to squeeze together, to constrict. So it means naked choke, often called in MMA and other fighting sports and fighting arts, rear naked strangle, rear naked choke. Apt description of it because you get behind them and you apply it. Now, what we're going to show today are the basics, just the basics of it. We're just going to show how to do using the square grip, a very basic way of using the square grip. There are a lot of variations, but I'm going to show that in some videos today. And also the figure 4 application, which is the older application, actually, of how to do this. But in that figure 4 application, we're going to add a little different twist in it. And Derek's going to be showing that in one of the videos here of how you can really make it even nastier than what it is now, what you might know it. It's just a different twist that we think really does work. So we're going to show you that about the figure 4 as well. But to start out, the Hadaka Jime, like I said, means naked strangle, naked choke. I look at it two ways, and I think this is generally what most people do. You either attack the trachea, which is, the windpipe, and that blocks the airway. That's a classic example of a choke, like when someone's choking on food, it obstructs their airway. So that's a choke. And a strangle is when you attack the carotid arteries, cutting off the blood and thus cutting off the oxygen to the brain. In both cases, chokes and strangles are very dangerous. You should use maturity and great care when training and teaching and practicing strangles and chokes. This is not something to play around with. So these are dangerous techniques, and I believe they're the great equalizer. A lot of other people have said that as well. A smaller person, not as big as an opponent or assailant, can certainly use a strangle or a choke, and in this case, Hadaka Jime, it's perfect for it, against a larger person because everybody's got a neck. No matter who you are, how big you are, how strong you are, you've got a neck, and in that neck, you've got to get air and oxygen and blood to your brain. And when that's cut off, you're in trouble. And so that's where chokes can be dangerous, strangles can be dangerous. So we're going to point that out in today's videos, the videos we'll see today as well. So, but anyway, Hadaka Jime, again, it's one of those basic techniques that never gets old because you always work it. You always come back to that basic technique to get that Hadaka Jime. And no matter what level of competition, no matter what fighting sport, you're going to see people using Hadaka Jime in its various forms. So we're going to take a look at that today. We're also going to take a look at, a little later, I want to talk about sweating the small stuff, when we're training, when we're actually training. Don't want to get preachy about it, but I think it's something we need to really talk about. So sweat the small stuff. That'll come a little later in the show. But right now, let's look at Hadaka Jime, the naked strangle, and naked choke. And this first video is about 2.5 minutes long, and I'm just going to show the basics, how I teach it. And you'll see us starting in a basic position. You'll see things graduate, progress to a more realistic situation as you watch the videos today. But we're going to start a very basic position where I'm kneeling behind the people in the class there. So anyway, let's take a look at the basics of Hadaka Jime. We'll see that right now. We're going to look at the difference between a choke and a strangle. Okay, a choke and a strangle. So there is a difference. Now, in Japanese, it's shime waza. Shime means to constrict or pinch together. That's what but generally people call a strangle or a choke. It is. It's choking or strangling. So we're going to look at, with Hadaka Jime, the no-gi, the naked strangle, naked choke. We're going to look at different variations. What is a choke? What is a strangle? So here we go. This first is two versions of Hadaka Jime. One will be against the trachea. Okay, and anytime you block or obstruct the airway, the trachea, that's a choke. Okay, it's a choking action, like when somebody chokes on food. give him the hind leg. Okay, so this is what this is. And, okay, that's standard there, you know, Hadaka Jime, all right? So, you know, I've got him here, locked him in tight, there we go. Okay, Hadaka Jime, it's against the trachea, all right? Now, another way you could do Hadaka Jime, an older version, and I don't know if police still do this or not, I'm not really sure, but what they'll do is they'll come and it's against the carotids now, which is against the blood. Okay, so in the first one, I'm blocking the airway, which stops the oxygen from going to the brain. The second way, I'm attacking the carotids and cutting off the blood, stopping the air from going to the brain. So this one like this, and Hadaka Jime like that. Your elbows down, and it's kind of like his head's in the middle here, and it's a nutcracker. You're squeezing him in like this, and this action here, and you get him like that, okay? So that's an older version of Hadaka Jime. Right? But you see this one as well here. This is my preference because it hurts more. And they know they've been really strangled or choked. Okay, because when you get them like this, it's a choking, gagging reflex. But this is the older way. So some people say that. Now, variations of it are, if you got long arms like me, I can get away with a choking action when doing the old version of Hadaka Jime. The older version, which is figure 4, as it's often called. Okay, my arms are long enough, I can still do this and put it on my biceps, catch it like that, and I can do it. But generally, most people will do it this way and catch it. Okay, that's the more older version of Hadaka Jime. There are two of the square versions, square grip, then the figure 4. Again, these are how I teach Hadaka Jime. I like it. I've used it a lot. Like I said, it's one of my favorite techniques, but you may show it a little slightly different. It's just, that's how I start people out on Hadaka Jime, which you just saw in that video. This next video, I'm going to get, it's only about 2 minutes long or so, a little longer, a little minute 50 seconds, something like that. But it's a look at the Hadaka Jime against the trachea. Now, this is my personal favorite way of doing Hadaka Jime because it hurts more. It really does hurt more. So let's take a look now at this short clip on the square grip use of Hadaka Jime against the trachea. I'm going to choke with my right hand. My left foot's going to be up. The reason I'm doing this in this position, very basic way. You probably wouldn't really do this in a fight. You may, but the basic way here is I'm above him and I have balance. This is my choking hand. This is my post leg. Okay. All right. What I want to do is use this bony protrusion right here, just right here at the Adam's apple. Reach in there, palm down. Now, it's a straight line from my finger to my elbow. As I do that, I'm going to trap him with my head. Now, my right ear is on his left ear. As I do that, I grasp my hands together. Now, some people aren't too specific or picky about it. I kind of am, because if you have a good square grip, thumb over, and lock with your thumbs in a square grip, or what's called a gable grip in wrestling, any old grip, don't do that. You want to get a good square grip. You may have this, but you still can pry it apart and keep it square. Okay, so reach there, reach there. Now notice his head is being trapped with my shoulder and my head and my arms. So he's really socked in tight. There's the choke right there. And all I'm going to do is in and up, roll it in and up. And when he taps, he either taps me or something I can visibly see or hear. And when it happens, I stop. So here it is like this. Ready? Quick tap. By tapping me, I know he's really. There may be a lot of noise in the gym, and sorry, buddy. That's how it's trying. So, but there may be a lot of noise in the gym, so it's best if he taps me. Okay. So I did it. See, always remember, choking hand is palm down. So there's the position. All right. Now I change the other side, and the drill we'll do is I'll do one right, one left. I want to get ambidextrous at my chokes. Strangle. Same thing there. And I choke. Okay, taps. All right. Then it'll be his turn. One right, one left. Now, I have talked to some people who say, well, it's against the spirit of judo, or it's not nice to attack someone's trachea. It's not nice to choke or strangle someone anyway. No matter what you're doing to him, this is a dangerous act. And the attacking the trachea does hurt. It makes them gag. You know, if someone's choked you with this, you know you've been choked. It is unpleasant. And as I often say, this is one of those great techniques when you use on someone. He will never forgive you or forget you if you make him tap out with this technique, because this hurts. And so if you want to have an edge over an opponent in the next match, using the square grip Hadaka Jime against the trachea is a good way to do it, because it's that guy remembers you're the guy that made him gag and quit. And he will remember you. He may not like you, but he will remember you. And I think it gives you an edge. So that's, psychologically, tactically, that's another way of looking at this form of Hadaka Jime. Now we're going to turn our attention to the figure 4 Hadaka Jime. And again, the basic, configuration of it like this, that's great. That really works. But Derek's going to show with Mike Pennington here in this next clip of a sneakier way, a nastier way to do this. And he's going to start, when he's starting it out, he's starting with a Hadaka Jime with a square grip, but he quickly changes it to what he calls the X or arm cross method. So you'll see that. It's about a 2-minute video, but I think he explains it quite well in here. So here we look at a figure 4 or arm cross Hadaka Jime.
Is once we're here, I face my palms towards me and I make an X, and it slides nicely right in between there. So we're
come around the other side to get that X so we can see that.
Okay, so we're palm to palm, hands face towards me, okay? Slide my hand back behind there, and then you just squeeze. Okay, and you've got pretty good control at that point. Slide back through. It's easy to get a hold of my bicep then. By just sliding my hands, I will eventually hit my bicep, and my other hand will go behind the back of the head. I grab the bicep and I turn the edge of my hand towards my other shoulder, okay, to get the knife edge of my hand against the back of his head to aid in the pushing motion. And then all you do is you put your head in and you squeeze.
Now, a lot of people put their hand on the head. Let's talk about that, because that's not the strongest of ways to do it.
Okay, so again, if I'm going through my motions, and even if I come up through here like this and grab the top of the head, the problem with this is that I'm no longer pushing the head with this hand. I'm holding on to it so that I can squeeze, and I will eventually get the tap, but you'll notice how long that took. Okay, the other problem with that is that when I'm here, he can grab my hand and pull it down. Okay, happens all the time. So even coming behind here, you'll still occasionally see people reach back behind there and grab the hand and pull it off. Okay, and again, your choke's off there. So instead of grabbing and then doing a looping motion back behind, again, we face the palms towards us, slide over, and now he's going to have a dickens of a time trying to pull my forearms out of there. Okay, he might eventually get it. Okay, see, it is possible, but only if my head's way back here. As soon as we get through here, I put my head in, and now I've got an extra clamp to keep him from pulling my arm off, or I can put my chin up there too. And again, it's like someone putting a latch down on top of a gate or something, and then from the squeeze, it's a very easy and controlled choking motion.
And the first guy who showed me that was Derek. I mean, I want to give him all the credit in the world for coming up with that. I don't know if he learned that from somebody else or he dreamed it up himself, but I'd not seen that particular method before he showed it to me a number of years ago. And I'd always taught the figure 4 version of it. It works well too. So I think give that a try. It's a cool move, and it really is quick. It's a nasty form of Hadaka Jime. When I say nasty, I mean in the best sense possible, because if a choke's nasty, that means it works. So there you go for that. All right. What we're going to do here now in this last video, I have a saying that all strangles, all chokes begin with your legs. And it sounds crazy. What do you mean begin with legs? You got to control them first. Okay, so what we've been showing up to this point are a passive opponent letting me choke him or strangle him. Okay, but now nobody's going to let you lay there and choke him and let you strangle him. You got to make it happen. So what we're going to talk about now is how to control someone to get them to the point where we can do a Hadaka Jime. And that's the use of a breakdown. And they're what my friend John Saylor termed a rodeo ride many years ago. It's basically you get them on the back, you're riding a horse or a bull or something, and you're on top of them, and you flatten them out, and you let him have it with Hadaka Jime. You can also not just flatten him out, you can roll him over onto his buttocks in what we call a seated rodeo ride. And we're going to show those in this next clip here. And it is it's a little longer. It's about 3 minutes 40 seconds, but it kind of describes, it very much describes the action of breaking an opponent down. You have to break them down to get the Hadaka Jime. And this is basic stuff. You probably all know this. These are just some of our ways of breaking someone down in the flattening them out, which is very important. But also, it's important how to roll them over. And you're going to see in the video how we do control the guy to control the opponent, where we roll him over onto his buttocks and apply Hadaka Jime from a seated position. So we'll watch that right now. He's not going to sit there and let you choke him. You're going to have to make him go, okay? So a lot of times he might be on elbows and knees, or I might have snapped him down, and bam, he's here, all right? For whatever reason, I snapped him down, got him, he's on elbows and knees. I'm going to quickly get behind him, get my hooks in, hook, get the rodeo ride. Now, whether I drive through, grab the lapels, Superman him and drive through, whatever, I'm going to do the Superman style, where I'm just going to bang him, hit and go like this, like I'm diving off the building like Superman. Bam! Flatten him out. When I flatten him out, kind of uncontrolled hit there. I wanted a little more control, but see the legs are up. I'm leaning into him very deep. I've got good control here. Okay, I'm not just sitting. I could be sitting here, but when I finish, I want to be here, riding him like this. Now, when I do that, I'll swing one arm through, catch it, roll him up, and finish the choke. I'm basically hanging him, guys. That's what's happening. See, I'm leaning forward, whole weight into forward into the body. His feet are off the mat, like this position, and I trap it. It's a nasty choke. So I'll get behind him, get my hooks in, see, nice and deep like a rodeo ride, flatten them out. Once I get there, choke it. Okay? Either hand, doesn't matter. That's why we want to be ambidextrous. I might have a better opportunity to choke my left hand in this particular case. Maybe next time it'll be my right hand. So we want to have those available. Always remember, choke your hand is palm down, your head next to his, trap his head. You cannot get away. Make it nasty. What we've been doing is flattening him out with the rodeo ride. Okay, now we're going to do another variation of the rodeo ride, what we call the seated rodeo ride. Okay, I know in BJJ and some mixed martial arts they call it, a mount or rear mount. We've always called it a rodeo ride. In fact, John Saylor, my buddy, named it back in the 80s, the rodeo ride. It gave it a name. So that's what it is. So we're going to do this as a wrist control. Okay, so we're going to start. Once Eric goes behind Nick, he gets his hooks in. Now watch what he's going to do. He's got his hooks in, and he's ready to go. And of course, he's stopping now. In a real situation, he'd be going at it, But look at how he catches the wrist. And he catches his other arm on the wrist. So he's got a two on one on the wrist, okay? Now when he rolls, he's going to roll in the direction of that wrist he's captured. You come up on your buttocks, and if you come back from the top, where you had the wrist. You have both wrists, okay, he keeps that one. Now, he traps that so the guy can't fight very well, okay? He comes over the top, and now I can go ahead and finish out with a Hadaka Jime. You can do other chokes from there. We've been working on Hadaka Jime, the square grip version, tonight. That's what we'll keep working with tonight. Okay, so we're rolling to capture that wrist. We're rolling that direction to capture the wrist in. Okay, there we rolled him. Okay, came over. And we finished him. So you trap that wrist. And by trapping the wrist, it breaks his shoulder down, his arm down, and you roll them easier. Okay, so that's why we do it that way. One more time around. Good. See how he rolls it. Now come up on your haunches. Remember, don't bear his weight on you. Remember, we talk about that a lot. Eric's seated on his butt. That's why we call it a seated rodeo ride from the back here. He's got his back, got his hooks in, finishes out there. So again, we just looked at basics of Hadaka Jime. There are a lot of ways to get somebody in Hadaka Jime. There's like a guillotine version where you're in front of them, which is a variation of Hadaka Jime from the front of your opponent. We didn't show that in these videos. So there are a lot of variations and applications of Hadaka Jime. It is a great technique. Like I said, it stands the test of time. It may be the first choke you learned, but man, you never stop using it. It is that good. So can't enough good stuff be said about Hadaka Jime. So that being said, let's move on to some other stuff. I do have a question, and it's kind of an interesting question, and I think it's worthy of a comment here. In a lot of my videos, you see the guys doing it like Eric or Derek or Mike or some of the other guys doing the techniques. And the question was, why don't you do more of the techniques in the video yourself? Well, that's a great question, and said here's some reasons for it. Number one, I'm about 6'4" and I weigh about 240 pounds, so I'm a lot bigger than everybody I practice with and teach right now, and have for a while now. So I think the size difference would kind of impede in me showing how the technique works. Sometimes I show techniques, I do, but I like to have people more the same size doing them, because then it shows how the application really does work. You can't just say, well, it only works because Steve's a big guy. So that's not true. It works because it's a good, technically skillful move. So people of the same size, pretty much, if they're doing it with each other, that's the big reason. That's number one reason. Number two reason is I'm beat up and I'm old and all that stuff. And like if we've been doing this all our lives, we do have some aches and pains. So I can't move as well as I used to. That's number two. But really the big reason is, I have hearing aids, and I'm partially deaf, and I wear them all the time. And so a lot of times I can't do a move, or I don't do a move because it'll knock the hearing aid out. So I don't want that to happen. I want to keep hearing. So that's another reason that I'm not doing the moves, a lot of the moves in the videos. So that's a good question, and it's worth being answered. And I don't want to tell the world I'm hard of hearing, but I guess I already have. But that's a valid reason for not doing them. So there we have that, and I hope that answers your question of why I have the guys do the techniques more than me. So there you go. Okay, I want to talk about something I think is pretty important, and I don't want to be preachy about it, so I won't be, but I will make mention of this, is that I've been seeing a lot lately in that people are not sweating the small stuff. Okay, John Wooden, the great basketball coach from UCLA, is quoted to have said, "Make the small things make big things happen." So pay attention to the details. And I don't mean, invent 17 ways, 17 different, steps to get to a move when 3 or 4 will actually do it. I don't mean that. I don't mean make it overcomplicated. But as a coach, it's my responsibility actually to break it down so that my students can use that technique, whatever it may be. Let's say Uchimata. It's a big throw. They call it the king of throws. You may call it the king of throws, maybe Osotogari is, but whatever the technique is. But take that move and don't just show the gross motor skills of how to do it. Show some actual applications of how to make it work. Show the basics, get the basics down, and once the basics get mastered, not really mastered, but understood by your students, once they start catching on, then add different movements to it, how to make it work for them individually or generally. But what I'm saying is sweat the small stuff. And I see that where I travel a lot, actually, and I don't see that often as much as I'd like to, when students are not catching it on. I heard an instructor say that you don't need to show him that, just show him the move. He'll figure it out on his own. He'll figure out how to do it on his own. And that's not efficient coaching, just my opinion. It might work for him, but it certainly wouldn't work for me. So I just wanted to mention that on, sweat the small stuff, teach the skills that lead up to a particular move. And then once you do teach the basic skill of that move, then take that another step farther and make it work for your students, make it work for them where they have a high rate of success. And, some people say, well, you don't want to personalize it too much because then it might be different than the original technique. That may be the case, but it's still the original technique. So take that original technique and make it work for them. And that's all I'm saying in this. And I don't want to get too preachy, but I think that's a phase of training we coaches need to really emphasize when we teach people judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu, whatever it may be. All right. Well, that kind of wraps up the show. I really appreciate you tuning in. And today was a lot of fun doing chokes because everybody's got a neck, and we did Hadaka Jime. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.